Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
And we're back on the Northland Sports page. The wonderful artist Santana being focused on here today. Coming up in the next segment, if you don't know already, you'll find out why we chose to do that. But speaking of great artists, we're going to have one in just a moment. We've got great sponsors. You're going to tell us about those as well.
You know, they are all kind of artists in their own way too, Brian, if you think about it. Let's start with the OG, Aurora Architecture Studio. Speaking of artists, right? I mean, that's what they do. They put their technical skills to work in an art fashion. Hoops Brewing. We don't even have to talk about brewers as being artists, right? OAR Holdings, Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. And truthfully, if you've seen some of the piping work that they have to do, also artists. Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing. Sammy's Pizza, I believe they call themselves pizza artists. Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, in Proctor, in Two Harbors, Blackwater right downtown, and Tavern on the Hill. Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Kohler Toyota, and Kohler Hyundai, where you can get a 65-inch TV whenever you purchase a car while supplies last.
So again, if you need a vehicle but don't need the TV, think of all the non-drivers in your life. I've got a place for it.
Comfort Systems of Duluth and Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance.
Again, so very grateful for our sponsors. They repeatedly make this show possible. Speaking of repeatedly, this fits with the Groundhog Day theme because the artist we're about to speak to, he's been on this show many times.
Yeah, the artist formerly known as Saints goalie coach is about to grace our airwaves.
Right. As we said, you might say that his tagline should be he's turned goaltending into an art.
Absolutely.
Because the artist and also goaltending guru, Tim Cortes, is on the phone with us. Tim, good morning. Thanks for being here again.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Very good. Very good. Good to have you. Nice to hear that voice. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, no kidding. I miss you guys.
We miss you too, but I'll tell you what.
In hockey rinks.
Well, there you go.
Right.
Because I was at a hockey rink last night. I was at Heritage, and even though I didn't see you, I could have seen a lot of things that you do because you've got that studio now right in that building. Tell the folks what you've been up to. You said it's been a while, and we agree, so you've been up to a lot. Enlighten us.
Well, I decided to take the year off of goalie coaching, and it's been the first time in probably 10 years because I just opened up a gallery/studio in the Heritage Center, which was very graciously dropped right in my lap by the folks at Heritage, Pat Francisco and Jerry DeMayo. They offered me a great space that used to be called the Warming Shack. For those of you who had parents' meetings.
I was going to say, inside the elevator, it still says Warming Shack.
Yeah, it still says Warming Shack, and that's really all they use that space for. It's a beautiful space. Now, for an artist, it's a great space because it's 1,000 square feet, 25-foot ceilings. It's wonderful. You can really spread your wings.
So tell us a little bit about, in terms of spreading your wings, some of your favorite projects that folks can see there.
Well, there's one of my very favorite is the one I did for Notre Dame when they did their 125th anniversary of Notre Dame football. I got a bunch of artwork from that in there. The one I'm trying to get is I have to get copies of the 3 murals I did for the Twins that are in the Champions Club. I never got the original photographs from that. So I'm working on getting that and get some replicas in there. But almost everything in my entire career, there periods of times, I mean, I can't fit everything in there, but I got about 1/10 of it in there representing different times in my career where, and now some of my newer stuff that has kind of dipping into wildlife and Western art. And yeah, it's kind of nice after 35 years of working in my basement to come out and see the public. It's nice.
All right, Tim, we had a chance to talk about the ones you loved. What's the Holy Grail? What's the one you want to do yet? I mean, you got plenty of time, but what's the one that you say, I want to do this?
Well, I got some, I haven't thought along those lines because I'm catching everything that's coming at me, and it's coming at me fast, which is great. It's no secret now. Lou Nanny is retiring from the state tournament broadcast this year, and I got a call from his son Marty, that I played with down at the University of Minnesota, and he said, "Hey, we got this going. You're the man. You got to do a painting for my dad, and we'll present it to him on the broadcast." So I'm working on that right now because that's right around the corner. And as far as people are hiring me to do inside of stadiums, if you can believe that, like walls. I never thought my career was going there, but there you go. I'm going to do something up at Mars Lakeview.
Yes,
The Roseau Rams want me to do a history of their program on a wall up there, and you never know where these things will take you.
Right. We got to get Tim to do one on radio broadcast teams.
You really want artistic stuff of us?
You and me.
Boy, I don't know.
Yeah.
It reminds me of
do a video is not a media radio thing.
I was going to say, it reminds me of like when I went to Fisherman's Wharf and got a caricature made. I don't know that anybody wants one of you and I. I don't know if that's a good idea. There'd be almost no hair.
You two guys that could do something.
Oh my gosh, that would be funny.
Yeah, if you can make me look better, Tim, I'll hire you to do whatever you want because there's a reason we're both in radio. I promise you that.
I can always make you look better.
Yes, you can.
Somebody's got to do it. I appreciate that. So you've talked a lot about the artistic abilities and what you've done in relationship to hockey because those are two things that you're very passionate about. Take us outside of hockey or maybe even outside of sports. What are some of your favorites there?
Well, my very favorite subject, I'm really into history. So what I've been trying to do, and it's a little bit of a sticky issue, is to try to document some of the history of the North American Indian, the Native American tribes and some of their traditions and all that kind of thing. And it's a really big market out there for that. But I've always been, since I was a little kid, I've been passionate about that. And I don't know if it's because my dad taught me a lot about that. We took a lot of trips out west when I was a kid. And I'm really going to pursue that. But I've also started doing wildlife. Like I just finished my first buffalo, which will be hanging up in the Buffalo House. And I just found I just love doing it. It's a freer, you guys are used to seeing my sports stuff, which is kind of ultra detailed, right?
Sure.
Well, I'm getting older. My hands are getting crampy. My eyes are kind of going. I want to do some big canvases where I'm just throwing paint around. And this is kind of my way to do that, I hope.
I would like that as well. As I'm looking around our studio going, you know what? It's very, very bare in here.
Very gray.
I was going to say, we could give you quite the canvas to work on here. You could turn the fan studios into really something special. Of course, we're kind of being tongue-in-cheek, but I'm curious.
You know what? I would love, for one, there's probably a ton of stuff that I already have that could fit in your studios. I'd love to donate some artwork to you, for sure. But I'm trying to figure out where your new studios are. Are they in the Downs on Superior Street level?
We are right in the Holiday Center. If you walk in the main entrance on Superior Street of the Holiday Center, if you go to the right, you're going to the Lyric. If you take a left, there's a long hallway, and Town Square Media is at the end of that hallway.
Yes, I thought Sasquatch was in there at one time.
Yes, and that is one of our stations as well. We're all in here. All the Town Square Media family is in here.
Okay.
So speaking of locations of things, now, Tim, I'm guilty of spending probably more time on social media than anybody else on this show, but the Heritage Center studio is known affectionately as Tim Cortes Studio West. Now, I saw on Facebook there's also a Tim Cortes Studio East. Talk about that one as well.
That one is my private studio at home that I've been working out of since I moved up here. And what I did is, now that the kids are out of the house, I took the whole basement and made that Tim Cortes Studio East. And I duplicated my art areas out in Studio West. The only difference is you can come up and go through the gallery out west. You know what I mean? But it's still, it's a work. Both of them are working studios. Just a little tougher to get in my house than it is to get out there.
I was going to say, I think maybe I could sweet talk you and Kathy where I could get a look, but maybe the general public couldn't.
You could,
yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about goaltending as well, because Tim Cortes, the artist, is wonderful, but so is Tim Cortes, the goaltender and goaltender coach. Yeah, the hockey artist per se, in terms of literally with the game. The reason I wanted to talk to you about it this year, and I know the artistic things have kept you busy, but this year there is really a surplus of great goaltending at the prep level in this area. You look at A.J. Riles, you look at Dane Calloway, you look at Connor Doyle, you look at Kanan Smith, who's just in the 9th grade. Cole Cronstead has gotten better as the year has gone on.
Yeah.
How much are you following the goaltenders, and what's made us all of a sudden have this big swelling of great performances?
Well, I think I've known and coached a few of them, and this is a special group that's there right now. When I was at East, Callaway was going to be my guy,
right?
And this is his senior year, and that was disappointing not to be able to see him through. But I still keep in contact with him and the family and stuff. And I think that AJ too. AJ's been good for a while. He's been an up and coming. It's made for some great hockey games, hasn't it? The goalies around here are studs, and I think it's just because the training's got so good. It's available. It costs money, but people are investing in their position nowadays, and it's really showing because they're low-scoring games, flashy goaltending. It's not lucky goaltending. It's goalies that know what they're doing, and there's a difference, if you know what I mean. Right?
I do, because you're absolutely right that it has made for great games on the broadcast season because we've had so many 2-1, 3-2, 1-1, 2-2. Yep. The only thing as a play-by-play guy, Dave, is I don't get to work on my goal call very often because nobody's scoring this year.
Well, and we have to hear John Carlson talk so much.
Right. John Carlson is a goaltender, Dad, and this is kind of the season dream come true for him.
Yeah, John.
Say, Tim, when you're looking at a goaltender, and it could be pretty much any age, but I'm not focusing on the kids at this point. When you're looking at a goaltender who's struggling a little bit, what sort of things are you checking off in your mind? What are the things like, okay, you need to work on that, or I see this?
If they call me in to work with the kid, or not, first thing I check is his footwork. How good of a skater is he? But people don't, and people have said this forever, it's supposed to be the best skater on the team, balance-wise and all that. It all makes sense when you start using words like that. So you check his footwork and his positioning and how much, when I look at a goalie nowadays, and I had a good one to look at college in Rob Stauber. His positioning was always perfect. That's why he didn't have to. He made it look so effortless, And the goalies nowadays too, the NHLers, those big guys are in position all the time. If they get beat on a good shot. You got So basically, when you're looking at a goalie who's struggling, you look at how he's skating and where he is in the net. And then if you can get in to talk to him, see what his attitude is. Because if they're moping around down there, they're not. I don't care how good their positioning is.
Right.
They don't have the right mindset.
I'm really glad that you closed with that part of it because I was just about to ask you. You brought up footwork. You brought up positioning. There's the mantra out there that goalies are different. Even some have said, hey, goalies are flat out weird. I was going to ask you, when there's a struggle, how much of it is in their head and has nothing to do with technique?
Well, I'll take myself for example. Okay, I got pretty far in hockey. Hockey was not my favorite sport because it was such a mind game for me. My favorite sport was football because I didn't have to think about anything except smacking the guy, across from me. So when it got into hockey season, it got very cerebral for me, and sometimes I was good at it, sometimes I wasn't. But you have to be strong mentally to get to any level because you will crack if you're not. I mean, that sounds kind of ominous, but it's true.
I was going to say, it might be the brutal truth. Go ahead.
It can really tear you up inside. It really can, personality-wise. If you're taking every goal against you, heart like that, you're not going to last long,
I think that's a good point. I want to talk about something you brought up earlier because you had Dane Calloway, of course, when he was at Duluth East, and back then it was for Mike Randolph as well. Now, a week ago yesterday, I had head coach Mike Randolph against Dane Calloway. Nothing involving Duluth East at all because it was St. Thomas Academy at Hermantown.
Sure.
St. Thomas Academy gets the win. Mike just continues to climb up that win total. How much are you following that as well? Because I think there are some of us that still smile about what he's doing.
I follow it a lot, and I still talk to Rand quite a bit. Actually, the whole staff that we had there still keeps in contact. And, hopefully we can plan it to be there, when he does get that win, that's going to be, I'm not going to keep an open ticket, but I would like to be there for when he gets that for him, because he's a special guy. He really is. He deserves it.
Absolutely is. So talk about, again, Tim Cortes, Studio West, because it's the perfect mix. We've talked a lot about hockey because you're an elite hockey mind, to steal a take from Mr. Paul Allen, but at the same time, you're an elite art mind, and people can go to a hockey arena and take in some of your art as well. Tell everybody, again, if they're not familiar, where to go and what they can expect to see.
Yeah, it's a bit of a trick once you get into the Heritage Center. But what you do is you go to the one and only public elevator, and if I'm there, you can go up to the mezzanine where you guys broadcast from. You can see if I'm up there. All the lights are on, open signs, neon signs, all of that. But you got to get up to that next floor, which is 2, right, which is completely confusing for people who get on the elevator. If they press 2,
I feel like he's speaking directly to me, but yes, go ahead.
So when I'm there, I have that back exit open, up the back stairs, and then also the elevator too. So the elevator opens right into my studio. So, and if I'm there, everybody's welcome. Kids, come on up. I'll show you a few things. That's why I'm there,
Absolutely. And you kind of segued nicely into my last question, because I've seen, this is gaining steam on social media, and I've seen friends of yours comment about, you should get tours arranged, field trips. Have you thought about that sort of thing? Can Tim Cortes Studio West become a go-to? Because there's probably not enough quote-unquote art museums in town, but folks like to check that out.
Well, there's a lot of galleries in town, actually, and I want to get on. There's a gallery. They do a gallery hop every summer, so I want to make sure I get on that, because my gallery, quite frankly, is different than anything else in town. My stuff wasn't very gallery friendly because it's so specific to clients that I've done work for. So to open my own, I just said, it was nice because I said, well, I'm just going to have my own stuff in here, Yeah. And so people can come and see, I got sketches of how I came up with certain book covers and stuff like that. It's kind of a museum of what I've done. There's sure everything's for sale, but it's nice. I want to make sure that people know that it is a neat place to go see a unique thing in the art world, and that's sports art mostly.
Yep.
Because there's not a lot of places that just cater to that. You know what I mean?
I do. It's certainly unique.
Yeah, and to have it as a working studio is just a bonus. So.
No question. Tim, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit with a final question as we let you go.
All right.
You've been a coach. You've been a goalie. You've been a sports mind. You've always had words of wisdom for young athletes. What about words of wisdom for young artists? Not that that's necessarily our listening demographic, but there could be an athlete out there going, you know what? I love art. I want to do that kind of thing. What kind of advice do you have for aspiring artists out there?
First of all, it's amazing how many goalies I've met, young goalies that are artists, that are into it.
Because they're detailed. They're precision.
Even a guy like John Blue that I played with at the U of M, same thing. He was an artist too. And anyway, inspiring words for artists are, don't get dejected if somebody doesn't like your stuff. Work on stuff all the time, every day if you can, and use all the materials in the world you can.
Always use your resources. Tim, you've been a great one for us. Thanks for joining the show again. Now that you know where we're at, we're going to have you come down at some point because we're going to have you scope it out and see what you can add to it. Thank you for the time this Saturday.
I can certainly help you out that way.
I got to love that.
You, sir.
Say hello to your lovely wife. We appreciate you, and let's talk soon.
All right. Talk later, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's Tim Cortes. It had been a while. Good to talk to him.
I love Tim. I hopefully see him around the arena. I know he's got to come. He's putting something up at Mars over the summer, which should be fantastic.
I was going to say he's got talents that are just off the charts.
Unbelievable.
Coming up next, the guy who's very talented as well, Nick Nelson of Twins Daily. Finally, some Twins off-season moves to talk about. Stick around. We will be right back.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players. Pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
Back here on the Northland Sports Page, going so smoothly here this Saturday. That's smooth. Santana featuring Rob Thomas. Every song on the show today, minus our open and our close that are consistent, are Santana. Why, Dave Cook?
Well, because they signed Carlos Santana today.
Yes, they signed another Santana. Where will he rank among the likes of Johan, Irvin, and Danny?
Danny's the trick to that whole thing. He's the delineation line, Brian.
If Carlos doesn't at least go above Danny, we're all in big, big trouble.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, after several weeks of not much of anything to talk about in the Twins offseason, a whole lot this week.
Well, yeah, they traded some guy for some other stuff. They signed some old first baseman, but they picked up Daniel Duarte.
Yeah, there you go. No burying the lead for Dave Cook. He's a big Duarte guy. Forget Polanco, forget Santana. It's all about Duarte. That'll be the difference maker, right?
Well, it cost us Ryan Jensen, so yes.
There you go. On the same day that a football center of the same name announced his retirement, so a tough day for that name.
Truly.
But I'll tell you what, an easy name to say and an easy name to get along with is Nick Nelson, and he's with us again. Mr. Twins Daily himself, good morning.
Gentlemen, how's it going?
Very well, because this is fun to finally have, I'm not going to call it hot stove per se, but at least the burner's lit, if you will.
Yeah, it's about time, right? It's been a long, slow off season, and now all of a sudden we're only a couple weeks from pitchers and catchers reporting, and finally starting to heat up. I think we all kind of knew going in this was going to be the cadence. It was going to be an even slower moving offseason than usual, but glad to see some action coming together, and I don't think they're done.
Well, and again, why do you think that, you mentioned slower this season, and I'll go with that, but generally speaking, why is this type of timing this front office's mantra? Is there a method to their madness? Because it's fairly consistent that when you think it's too late to do things, this team does.
Yeah, I mean, we know they're so value obsessed, right? They really want to get the maximum value in all these deals. They want to get the best, contract they can with these free agents. And the fact is that waiting them out increases their leverage. Once you get to this point in the offseason, trade partners are sort of running out of options. You're reaching the end of the line on those discussions. Free agents like Carlos Santana, they didn't get the deal that they wanted. Sorry about that. So I think it's really a lot about leverage, and of course, this offseason, a lot of it has to do with the TV deal as well, which finally we've gotten some clarity on.
So you mentioned best value. I want to ask about the Jorge Polanco trade. Do you think they did that? Because you look on social media, and of course, social media in general, everybody's an expert on everything, but you can really see opinions that run the gamut. On the surface, getting 4 players for one, and 2 of which should contribute to your roster almost immediately, seems like a pretty good deal when the desire to deal Polanco, to me, wasn't a well-kept secret necessarily. There are some that love this trade. There are some that don't. John Bonus pulled no punches about what this does in the immediate. There's a lot of ifs with everybody, but particularly with these players they got back. Where are you on, quote-unquote, grading this trade?
Yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm on it. I definitely get where Bonus is coming from. I think his point is accurate that this is not necessarily, this move on its own does not necessarily make the Twins a better team in 2024, which is what a lot of us want to see. I mean, the window is open right now. They're coming off that playoff run. This is the time. So, some of these future-focused trades where you're, getting that value down the line are not going to enthuse people, and I understand that. I think in terms of pure value, it's a good move. It makes a lot of sense. They were very focused on trying to get major league help back in this Polanco deal. I think they fell short of the impact that they wanted, but they're still able to get some guys back who can help them this year. DeSclafani, we'll see. I think Tope is a pretty good reliever, a good addition to the bullpen.
He's probably the bigger piece, isn't he?
Yeah, probably the more impactful piece for this year. And then, these prospects are solid. I mean, they're interesting, but they're both a couple years away at least.
So, Nick, you mentioned the TV deal coming to fruition finally, and at the beginning of the offseason, the Twins pointed at that and said, this is the reason we're not going to spend any money. Now that that's been cleared up, you think they'll be willing to go and spend a little bit of money on a player or two?
I do. As I mentioned, I think there's more coming, and some of that has to do with the money that they freed up in the Polanco trade. That enabled the Santana deal. But I do get the sense, nothing huge. I don't think they're going to go sign Blake Snell, but I think there are going to be at least 1 or 2 more free agent moves. I wouldn't be surprised to see another trade. I still see the top of the rotation as a big need. They sound like they want to move on a little bit maybe from that, but I really think that if they want to be a World Series contender, they need another frontline starter. So hopefully they're not done exploring that. And we'll get more details on, the specific money around this TV deal. Maybe we won't. I don't know. It's definitely less than they made last year, but should loosen up the purse strings a little bit and give them a little more flexibility for some late additions here.
So Brian and I were talking last week, I think, and we were talking about the Carlos Correa deal and how that all came to fruition and how Scott Boras kind of used the Twins as a place for Carlos to settle for a year, keep his value up, and then he went back into market, and we all know how that turned out. Is there a chance that Boras goes ahead and uses the Twins again and one of his 3 big-time free agents, and all of a sudden they show up at the Twins' doorstep?
I could see it, but the tough thing is that the Twins love one-year deals. Yeah, I think they're of the mind that there's really no such thing as a bad one-year deal if you don't have to commit multiple seasons. I do think that this year that's a little bit of a tough play for them just because of the uncertainty about their payroll and revenue for this season specifically. It's a one-year deal with Bally Sports. They don't really know what's going to follow that. So I think some of that uncertainty is going to probably prevent them from maybe like the high dollar one-year deal like they did with Correa. Although I could see that being, a move that Boras would make with Snell. It seems incredible that he would have to do that coming off a Cy Young season. But, to see those guys still sitting out there, those big names at this stage of the offseason, you've got to consider the idea that Boras might get creative.
Well, and I'm being completely tongue-in-cheek when I say this, but wouldn't Blake Snell be the perfect fit? Because if Kevin Cash is known for lifting guys early, if you go by social media, Rocco does that all the time, right? Blake Snell would be perfect here.
Yeah, well, it would drive fans crazy
to
watch some of those five and flies because he's going to walk 5 people. He's going to pitch through 5 innings, shut out, and then come out of the game.
You were smelling exactly what I was stepping in. Yes, that's the comment I wanted on that. That's beautifully done. I obviously do want to talk about the Santana signing. There was a piece of irony, I thought, that the TV deal and the Santana signing come within hours of each other. But I want to know this before we get into Santana himself. Is this a good sign? Pun not intended yet anyway. For the Twins, if Santana's going to be your DH, that means Buxton really is banking on being a center fielder. Or this is a bad sign that Carlos Santana has to play first because Kirilloff won't be ready.
I think it probably says more about Kirilloff than Buxton, honestly. I don't, and I don't think necessarily it's that they're, seeing negative signs with Kirilloff or they have specific concerns that have emerged from the latest surgery or his recovery over the offseason. But I just think they're realistic. I mean, Kirilloff has not been able to stay healthy at all, and frankly, he hasn't even proven himself as a true standout player consistently when he's on the field. So I think they want some depth. I think they want a veteran and some stability that they can use between first base and DH. One underrated aspect probably of the Santana signing is that he rates really well defensively despite being 37, 38 years old. And the Twins were not very good defensively at first base. They're throwing Donovan Solano out there. They were throwing Joey Gallo out there last year. Guys that aren't necessarily going to be standouts. So I think having like a natural first baseman, a guy that can, rotate through the DH spot, a switch hitter, a guy who's a little better against righties is just a nice fit overall for the roster, sort of regardless of the situations with Buxton and Kirilloff. But
right.
It does help.
Well, and why do the reclamation projects offensively seem to serve this team well where the pitching ones don't? Because I don't know if it was you or who it was, but somebody brought up Shoemaker on social media this week, and I cringed repeatedly. And Chris Archer, those kinds of things, those all didn't work. But then you look at, Nelson Cruz, Jim Thome. You can go as far back as Paul Molitor and Dave Winfield if you want to. When this team brings in old bats, it seems to work. And I'm not talking old bats as in a derogatory term for like the Golden Girls. I mean old offensive players. It seems to work. Yet the pitching doesn't. Does this front office have a better eye for offense? And I guess in Twins history, all of them have?
I think it's just like the valuation difference between hitters and pitchers. I mean, we see, pretty bad pitching reclamation projects this offseason. Frankie Montas, who barely pitched last year, got like $16 million. Giolito, who has been bad for the last couple of years, got like $38 million. These days, it just costs a lot to even get a decent pitching reclamation project where you can get a guy like Carlos Santana. Michael Taylor's still out there. He's probably going to be available for less than $10 million. I mean, there's decent hitters that you can get for a pretty low dollar because there's a lot more supply, I think. And then just in general, pitchers are so much more volatile and hard to predict. I think, we see that in the draft. The Twins would much rather draft a bat with their top pick than an arm. They don't spend on free agent relievers. They'd rather take their shot on a bunch of different guys like we've seen this offseason. So I think it's just a philosophical thing, and it just sort of aligns to the realities of pitchers versus hitters and how hard they are to predict.
You brought up Taylor. There was talk of Solano, a couple of weeks ago. We talked in the first segment because it's the day after Groundhog Day. We made it, unlike the movie, in the sense that the day repeats over and over. But is there any chance of a repeat/reunion with anybody like Solano or Taylor while they're still out there, or does Santana kind of put an end to that? Obviously, Santana doesn't play the outfield. I still think you need a Buxton insurance policy. Do they have that?
I think Santana's addition rules out Solano. He's filling a very similar role functionally to what Solano did last year. Someone like Michael A. Taylor, I think, is very much still on the table. I would expect them to add another outfielder, a righty-hitting outfielder, whether it's him, Adam Duvall. There's a few other names that have been mentioned out there. It might come down to just which one has the lowest price at the end of the day, with a few of these guys still sitting out there. But I know they're still interested in Taylor. They loved having him on the team last year. He'd be a nice fit. I mean, gosh, if you could run out an outfield against lefties with Taylor in left, Buxton in center, and Kepler in right, that's going to be a nothing but raindrop situation right there, and pretty decent offensively too. So I would keep an eye out for another right-handed bat in the outfield, and I would expect that to happen pretty soon, maybe even this weekend.
So my final question, I guess, is the pitching side again. You've got now with the trade of Polanco, it looks like you have what you might consider a 5-man rotation with Varland as a wild card. But do you think there's another pitching move? We've heard Michael Lorenzen all off season long. Do you think there's a move like that yet in the bag of tricks for the off season?
I wouldn't be surprised because they love having pitching depth, and as I mentioned, I don't think that they're, especially starting pitching, is where it needs to be right now. What really concerns me, DeSclafani is fine. I'm fine with adding another guy at the bottom of the rotation and pushing a guy out and having a little more depth, but I just don't think they have enough depth at the top side. Last year was so great about this rotation was that they were able to lose Tyler Mahle to a season-long injury, and they barely noticed it because you got Pablo, you got Sonny, you got the three other guys who were solid in the middle of the rotation. Right now it feels like if Pablo went down with an injury, God forbid, or even Ryan or Ober, it's going to open up a huge hole. And just suddenly this rotation just does not look that strong, does not look well-positioned for a playoff run. Yeah, you got the trade deadline, but I really think they need to add another starter. I would like to think they're aiming higher than someone like Michael Lorenzen, but we have heard those rumors. It wouldn't shock me if they added just another major league starter just to have more depth. But yeah, I do think at least one more pitcher is coming aboard here before the season.
I agree with you, and I think your point is well made. How much of that do you think, though, is due to the regression last year of Joe Ryan, frankly, not being able to keep the ball in the ballpark? Because Pablo is that good, in my opinion. Losing Sonny statistically obviously hurts. I think in the eye test, he looked under duress more often than the numbers showed. Chris Paddock was obviously going to be a question because of the injury. Bailey Ober, the innings have been limited. But is this rotation in question mainly because of Ryan?
Well, Louis Varland looking like a closer in the future.
Right.
Yeah. Ryan is the big question mark right now. I have a lot of confidence in Ober. He's pitched really well. I think some people are a little skeptical of him, but I don't know why you would be at this point. He's just consistently throwing really well.
I agree. I love the guy, but go ahead.
Yeah. Ryan is the question mark for me. A lot of it could be attributed to the injury when he had that fall off last year, if you want to put it on that, and I'm sure that played a role. But home runs were the question with this guy. There's a reason the Twins were able to get him for a couple months in Nelson Cruz. People weren't necessarily big believers in that fastball-heavy mix, and maybe we started to see that get exposed. So to me, he's my biggest question mark in the rotation. And like you said, if he drops off and is pitching like he did in the second half last year, this is a guy that the Twins, he looked like an all-star in the first half, and the Twins didn't trust him one bit by the time the playoffs came around. He barely got to pitch at all. I think he threw the fewest pitches of any pitcher on this active postseason staff. So, yeah, that to me is question number one here in the rotation.
I agree with you, and I think it's a big part of why his appearance in what turned out to be the final game was so brief as well. Hindsight 2020, but that is what happened. Talking with Nick Nelson of Twins Daily. Of course, I know quite a bit about Twins Daily because I feel like I go there daily, but listeners out there may not. Tell us again what it is, where they can find it, and what to make of the whole thing.
Yeah, thanks. Twinsdaily.com. As the name indicates, we've got new content up daily. In fact, we've got just tons of stuff. Several articles coming out every morning right now. Lots of coverage of breaking news. We've got our prospect countdown for 2024 going on right now, and just a lot of stuff here leading up to spring training and pitchers and catchers reporting here in about 10 days. So if you're a Twins fan, You're going to find every topic covered from every angle, and it's very easy to contribute to the conversation in the forums and the comments, or even creating your own blog. So if you like to talk Twins, come on by.
Absolutely. You mentioned pitchers and catchers report. I believe they report on Valentine's Day this year. So the old adage, how can you not be romantic about baseball, takes on a little different look this year. But one thing I like about Twins Daily a lot, and I know Dave as my co-host probably loves this more than I do, is the prospect countdown type stuff, because you focus on the kids that aren't here yet. I want to ask about a couple that should or will be here soon. Where does Austin Martin and where does Brooks Lee factor into 2024 for the Twins?
Great question. I mean, I think they are, among the prospects that are going to make a quick impact. These guys rank pretty much at the top of the list. Austin Martin, of course, was the prospect, sort of centerpiece that the Twins got back when they traded Jose Barrios at the deadline in 2021. He's had some struggles since coming aboard with injuries, with a lack of power, but he really is, I think, the type of player that Twins fans, especially like old school kind of baseball fans, are really going to enjoy as a change of pace for this team. Very contact heavy, very fast, sort of a scrappy, hustling, base running, spark plug type guy. So I'm really excited to see him join the mix and give them a little bit of a different look with all these plodding power bat kind of guys. And functionally, he can play center field. He can play second base, sort of a utility profile. So I think he fits in really nicely with what this team is going to need on the bench. I would bet that he'll open in AAA just because, the Twins, they don't necessarily like to put their prospects right into the fire right away. They like to have that depth.
Right.
Kind of the same thing with Brooks Lee. I mean, Brooks Lee could start at second base on opening day. Wouldn't be out of the question, but I think they'll give him a little time in AAA and he'll be ready. If his performance is strong early in the season and there's an opportunity, he's going to come right up because they're very high on him, and I think they think he's pretty much ready.
I think you're right, but here's a sports cliche that I can't stand, but it's a thing for a reason. As Common Man says, cliches are cliches for a reason. A lot of kids the Twins are counting on. A lot of potential sophomore slumps. How much is the league going to adjust to the likes of Wallner, Royce Lewis, and do they have the mental fortitude to overcome that? Is that the huge question this year? Julian as well.
I think so. Yeah, I wrote about that at Twins Daily a little while ago. When your success is driven to the extent like it was last year by a historic rookie class, I think that's always going to be a narrative. We've seen a lot of players splash onto the scene with good rookie seasons and then really drop off the following year. You mentioned Danny Santana earlier. There's an example.
I did.
You think of Danny Valencia. You think of some of these guys who really came out of the gates and caught our attention, and the team sort of planned around them the following year to their own detriment. I think with Wallner, especially as a guy who that sticks out as a concern just because his profile is so extreme with the strikeouts and the hard swinging. But you look at guys like Julian, that's a hard sort of profile to solve. He's literally the most patient, disciplined hitter in the major leagues as a rookie. He's not going to swing outside of the zone. As a pitcher, how do you solve that? You got to attack him in the zone, and he's shown the ability to destroy those pitches. So, and then Royce Lewis, we had our Twins Fest event for Twins Daily, the Winter Meltdown, last Saturday, a week ago, and Matt Wallner and Louis Varland were on stage as our guests, and it was just interesting to hear them talk about Royce Lewis. They basically, to paraphrase, it was like a question was asked about some aspect of his game, and they just said, Don't compare anyone to Royce Lewis. I mean, he's a complete freak. The way he plays the game is like no one else they've ever seen. So
that makes me so giddy just to hear that. That makes me so incredibly giddy. The only downside as a Twins fan would be like, yeah, they said that about Buxton too.
Right. Yeah. Well, that is the question. The biggest question is health, right? But I mean, I think if Lewis is able to stay healthy this year, God, I don't know what he's going to be able to do, because the most recent thing we saw, I was just rewatching the highlights of Game 1 of the playoffs. I mean, to come out and hit 2 home runs in your first playoff game for a team that has on a 20-year drought and basically lift them to victory, I mean, it's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was definitely storybook, one hell of a season, certainly. Nick, I'm going to let you go simply because if I don't, we could do an entire 2-hour show together. In fact, maybe as we get closer to opening day, we should think about that. Thank you again.
Sounds great. I'm always down. Thanks, guys.
All right, Nick. We appreciate it. That is Nick Nelson of Twins Daily, because I'll tell you what, Dave Cook, you and I probably talk about the Twins daily.
100% we do, Brian. It's getting kind of exciting because we're getting there. I noticed you didn't ask about Simeon Woods Richardson.
I didn't, because I knew you couldn't spit it out. But I know you can spit out Vencie Glenn. He joins us Hype Week, Super Bowl previews next to close the show. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
But we do. That's Carlos Santana, no one to depend on. We go to maybe our most dependable guest, maybe ever, but certainly all through football season, Dave Cook. We're going to go to Vencie Glenn to close the show yet again.
Well, the thing about a good safety, Brian, he's always there at the back to make sure that nothing goes awry. I was
going to say, he's the last line of defense for this show.
And he's our guy.
The last line of defense is Vencie Glenn. Our great offense is our sponsors.
Absolutely. Let's start with the original Arola Architecture Studio, Hoops Brewing, OAR Holdings, Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer, Advantage Element Screen Printing, Sammy's Pizza, the Blackwoods Group, including Tavern on the Hill, Blackwater downtown, in Two Harbors and in Proctor and on London Road, Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Comfort Systems, and Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance.
You started with the original, the OG, Arola Architecture Studio. They bring you drawing lines each and every week. We continue to bring in Vencie Glenn as part of drawing lines. Vencie, the Super Bowl participants are set. Chiefs and Niners should be a terrific game. Your thoughts on conference championship weekend, and of course, good morning.
Oh, good morning. I thought they were two great games. Two great games. I was just very, very disappointed in the defensive tackling in the Frisco game, in the Lions game. This is for the Super Bowl, and that had to be two of the worst tackling performances I've seen of any team, championship team, trying to get to the Super Bowl. And then on the other hand, in the AFC, I don't know what happened to Lamar and them.
Yep.
The Ravens was just, it was unbelievable. And not only that, the immaturity showed. And if you think about the Ravens defense, they held Mahomes to 3 points for 3 quarters.
Right.
Lamar Jackson in offense was a no-show, and that's sad. So if I'm looking at the Super Bowl, I'm going to say Kansas City has the edge to me. And the reason why, because their defense is the one that has gotten them in the Super Bowl the last 7 to 8 games. Their defense is playing phenomenal, and they tackle. And that's going to be the game changer.
It really could be, and it's interesting because it's a team that, revolves around in terms of coverage, Mahomes and Kelsey, but the story really has been their defense. And Vencie, I agree with you. I think that household names became verbs in conference championship weekend because Lamar'd in that game. He hasn't had a good playoff history, if you will. And Dan Campbell, the Riverboat Gambler, you came up with all kinds of words for me that I couldn't think of a few segments ago. I went with reckless. You said rambunctious. We came up with risky. There were so many things. That is what Dan Campbell does, but everybody's saying this is going to bite him, and it did. It's very interesting, but leave it to the defensive guy to make the defensive point.
Well, I have a quick question on why he thought Lamar no-showed. Has he lost a step? And as a running, we talked about running quarterbacks a couple weeks ago. As a running quarterback, when you lose a step, is that what we saw with Lamar? It looked like he was getting caught from behind, and times he didn't get caught from behind, and maybe the offense isn't built around his ability to throw?
Well, I think Lamar is going through an identity change right now. Because you saw runs where he would have kept running in the past and just got out of bounds to try to, opposed to, okay, I got my yards, let's get down, let's keep moving the chains. And, I think Zay Flowers was the one that really changed the tone of the game by his immaturity.
Absolutely.
The way he was acting when they got down to the 7th, the ton calls takes them back to the 25. They don't even score, fumbles down on the goal line. So I think there was a lot of immaturity in that. As you know, Odell Beckham was non-existent, so they need to go find some receivers that can get open and get up the field and threaten a little more. And I just don't think they were prepared the way they needed to be. I don't think I'm not going to say Harbaugh didn't motivate them the right way, but as professional athletes, like I say, players play and coaches coach. And they did not come to play offensively, and that's the wrong time not to be able to play well.
I feel like the storylines of the conference championships were Mahomes, Lamar, Dan Campbell, what have you. Are we all overlooking Brock Purdy again? He's got a great supporting cast, but he was quietly pretty darn good in that comeback as well.
No, I don't. Here's the thing. Everybody's looking for this headline next great story to be the Tom Brady. And it's just so much hype. And like I say, sports is entertainment now. So you look for the entertainment value instead of guys just going, he's one piece. Yeah, he's a valuable piece of the puzzle, but he's one piece of the puzzle that helps a team win a championship, just like Tom Brady was, just like Terry Bradshaw was. You can go back to Montana. They're just one piece. It's a collective thing, and if anybody that's ever won a Super Bowl, they'll know that. And you listen to, I got friends that won Super Bowls, and it's just the love and the passion you play for each other, down in and down and out. And that's the difference. I don't like giving one guy, he's doing his job. Yeah. And that's all they ever ask. Do your job and let everybody do their job, and let's see where we come out. That's football.
So, Vencie, we've talked over the years about players play and coaches coach. And then you get Dan Campbell. And Dan Campbell, in my opinion, put his team in a spot where players had to do more than play because the coach tried to do more than coach. When you have a coach who likes to take chances, is there ever a time when players and or assistant coaches need to pull the reins and say, at this point, just kick the field goal so we can continue to play?
You can't do that, but I promise you, some people in the front office might have some questions about that this offseason and the way he approaches his team, because you also can ruin a team like that. You know what I'm saying? Yep. He's a former player. He wants to go all the time. That's what players want. But sometimes you have to do what's best for your players to put them in a situation to win football games. And that was his job, being up that much and dominating that much. And then within 8 minutes of the second half, it's pretty much a tie ball game. That's just not coaching. And then you do things to make up for it, saying, okay, I'm going to stay true to my identity, which great players and great coaches, they don't stay true to their identity. Their identity is whatever it takes to win that ball game. And then they become a chameleon. Then next week they gain identity again. And that's what he didn't do. He stuck to, I'm a riverboat gambler, and it cost him, and the ship sunk.
I'm really glad you said the part about sticking to an identity, because that was part of why I think he was defensible a little bit, but he did go, basically all out Madden on this, like he was playing a video game. But it's also part of why I didn't jump on the bandwagon when everybody applauded Dan Campbell, because he was taking the types of risks that I simply wouldn't. And I was waiting for it to burn him. I don't know if I was cheering for it or not, but I just kind of eye-rolled the chances every now and then, and finally in the biggest way last weekend. But again, this is what he does. So if we're going to criticize when he loses, why don't we criticize when he wins? Because it sounds like he's getting away with quote-unquote murder in a football sense.
Well, I don't. When they do it, players make the plays, and they bail them out. You can get bailed out by players. Somebody making a great shot at the end of the game with 3 seconds left. You don't really have an offensive call for basketball for it, but if a guy makes a great shot, they win the game. So it's really not the coach, it's the player. So, but then there are times where coaches can make better decisions to help the players in the long term toward the end of the games, that give them confidence to have a chance to win. But when a player loses confidence in the middle of a game or in the third quarter, it's tough to gain that confidence and resilience back, because you're in a tough environment. You're on the road, and it's tough.
All right, so we're talking Super Bowl with Vencie Glenn, but of course our favorite team is nowhere near that, so it's off-season mode, whether it be draft or Senior Bowl. Last question of the day. I'm going to be a good co-host. I'm going to hand it to Dave Cook.
Absolutely, Vencie. Watching the Senior Bowl all week, the practices and whatnot, and a cornerback from Toledo jumped off the page. He's had some pretty good numbers in college and whatever. Does the level of competition that you play in college, so in his case he has 6-7 interceptions, but he's playing Kent State, he's not playing Alabama, does that matter in the makeup of a player when they come in, if they didn't have the background of competition, level of competition, versus somebody that did?
It's a different level in college, especially. I've watched Toledo a lot the last 2 years, because my buddy's son, who's a former Viking, Brad Culpepper, his son is a starting nose tackle for Toledo. So I watched him play personally and watched the team over the last couple of years. It's a whole nother level from playing at Toledo and going to being a quarterback in the NFL. It's just night and day. I went to a 1AA school, and coming to the pros, it's night and day. It's totally different. It's more competitive. The guys are bigger, stronger, and faster. and you have to elevate your game. Is he the kind of quarterback? He's not that tall to come in and just make that kind of impact. I like him. He's a good runner. He's a good thinker, but it's tough to come in and be a big impact. But he's a good football player. He should have a chance.
Vencie Glenn, you are the best. I'd forgotten about Brad Culpepper, good old number 77, former D lineman, I believe, for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah,
this was fun. We'll talk Super Bowl, of course, the day before, next Saturday. Thank you again.
Thanks, Vencie.
You got it, guys. Have a great.
You as well. That's our guy, 2-5, Vencie Glenn. What a show, yet it's done already. It flies by when you're having fun. Thank you to Dave Hoops. Thank you to Tim Cortes. Thank you to Nick Nelson. Thank you to Vencie Glenn. Thank you, Dave Cook.
I got to get to Mars, sir.
I was going to say, you got to hurry. Yep. I hope NASA's ready for you if you're going to Mars that fast. You go to Mars Lakeview, I'll go to Duluth East. It's a busy sports weekend just about everywhere. You want a game, it's easy to find. Have a good one, Northland. We'll talk to you next Saturday.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.